What's up, guys? Go Rodeo Gaming here, back with another video from my favorite train simulator, Run 8. By far the most realistic. Today, I'm going to show you how we build outbound trains in West Colton. I worked in the West Colton yard for about, I want to say, 2 or 3 months out of training. That was where I kind of did my first stint. And then on the job training, before I got out of training, I did probably a solid month or so at least. So very familiar with West Colton, worked in here plenty to get familiar and get an idea of what you do with all the jobs. So yeah, we call it a trim job, so let's get going. Alright, we are on the nose of our power, going back. We're going to run this basically like a remote job like I did. So you'd have the box attached to your vest. And we'd be out on the platform just like this on the nose of using an SD40. This is a tunnel motor, but close enough. Can't exceed more than 10 miles an hour in the yard. So these are the departure tracks, what we call the 300 tracks in West Colton. I believe there was 9 or 10 short tracks, so trains that are under about 5,000 feet, maybe a little over. And then we had 4 long tracks. Those long tracks, I think, could fit up to 8,500 foot trains, if I remember correctly. So today we're going to build a train. We'll put it in the short tracks. As you can see to the left, there's an outbound train ready to go. Got some stored power over there. Good stuff, good stuff. Got an inbound manifest to my right. That'll go into the receiving yard. Now, during all this movement, these are air-controlled switches in this portion of the yard. Pretty much all the switches in West Colton now are all air-controlled. So use air pressure to switch it, and you have to talk to what we call the trim yard. So he controls basically the hump bowl, which is up here, and east of it, the departure yard, all that good stuff. So you ask him, you tell him where you need to go, and he lets you know if you're okay to do that, or if he wants you to stand by. Walked over this bridge many times to get to the trim yard. This is the old tower, they don't use it anymore. There's a crew room right there where you get your paperwork. Alright, so we're coming into the bull tracks. The bull tracks are where the cars are humped into. You have different yard leads. This is, I believe, what they call the 7 lead, if I remember correctly. I can't exactly remember. Shocker. It's been, let's see, 4 or 5 years since I've worked in the yard. So my memory is probably failing me, but basically you got different leads. That's where they tell you to go. They say, hey, go up this lead to get to your cars. Or you just know, hey, I need to go up this lead to get to my cars. So we're coming up to the head end of our train. This will be our first track. You notice it's a tank car. Typically you don't see a tank car on the head end of a train because of the hazmat and all that, but today we're just going to ignore that. It's not the end of the world. I'll come up to it nice and easy. That would have been a good joint right there. Get off on the ground. So the first thing I would do is I go forward on my box and we get a stretch. Make sure I got a stretch, and then I'd be watching the whole rest of the train. So I'm looking to see if there's any gaps or if we got the whole track coupled up. Having a whole track coupled up was a huge win. Now, I placed these cars so there's no gaps, but I would have to double check. And as I walk this track, get it nice and stopped, I have paperwork in my hands. I'm checking car numbers, so I'm walking, I'm checking, okay, NDYX515, That shows to be, let's see, yep, that's the third car on this cut. Alright, fourth car, SPFE, and then whatever number this is. So you're checking every single car number. You're looking for any defects. You're making sure they're all coupled together, because you need to verify that each car is in its correct track, and you need to verify that there's no car in the track that's not on your list, because you don't want to take a car that's meant to go to Roseville, but this train you're building is going to Tucson. So then, if you don't see that there's an extra car in the train, that car is going to take a big detour all the way to Tucson. So you're walking, you're checking everything. Now at the same time, I'm also checking this track to my left, because this is going to be the second cut of cars. So this is the head end of the train, which are paperwork. It would show head. This, let's say we call it mid 1. So this would be the first middle part of our train. Right there would be mid 2. So you're kind of dual checking tracks if you can. And I'm looking to see where there might be two knuckles that are butt up against each other, which means that they didn't make a good joint. So when they're humping cars down into here, they didn't couple. So I'm checking these cars, checking this track, making sure it's all coupled up. At the same time, I'm trying to do this track as well. You're basically saving time, and now you know what you have to do on this track as well. Sometimes you get cross draw bars, so on things like center beam lumber cars, auto racks, they have long draw bars. So sometimes they come in and clip each other, and then one goes this way and one goes that way. So you have cross draw bars. So then I would pull up the train, believe it was 100 feet, call a red zone, come in here, straighten out the drawbars, open the knuckles, and then try to come back to a hook and get a good hook on here. So this one track can take anywhere from 10-15 minutes to 45 minutes. If there's something out of the blue, take longer. You're just trying to do everything in a somewhat timely fashion. Alright, so let's say everything checks out on my paperwork. All the cars are in there, everything's coupled up. Now I pitch it to what basically is the switchman, who also has a box. So he would be standing on the front end of this lead locomotive. So you basically have one guy who does a lot of the work, a lot of the walking, and then you have a guy on the head end to assist you in any kind of way that he can. But mainly he stays on the head end, and in this situation he would be pulling the train out. So I would give him control of the train by what we call pitching it. So you pitch from your box to his box, and now his box has control of the locomotives. As this train is coming out, I'm double checking car numbers. I'm just paying attention to everything I can. So this is mid 1, so this will be the next cut of cars we come to. Mid 2, and then the rear of the train over there. So you're thinking ahead, you're thinking in the present, all at the same time. That's probably the hardest part about the railroad, is you're having to pay attention to several different things. And same goes for when you're taking a train across the road, right? You're taking a train from point A to point B. You're thinking ahead. You're thinking of the upcoming signals, upcoming turnouts, upcoming road crossings. But you also have to think in the present as well. Now, I think there's quite a few people who cannot think in the present and think ahead, which is why you get some not so good railroaders, I'll say. Now, as the guy on the head end is pulling this train out with the remote control box, so it's in his control, I'm counting him down to over this switch, right? Because this is the next track we have to go into. Now, he doesn't know how far away it is. It's basically, there's an engineer on the head end, and you're telling him how many cars he has to go until we're over the switch. So you want to try to do this somewhat accurately so he doesn't stop way down there, then you got to bring the train all the way back. You also don't want to stop short of it. Better a little bit too long than too short in this case. So we're going. Alright. That was pretty good right there, except we got some slack. Woo! Just in time. Did you see that? Now you're not switching with air with these short track trains most of the time. You might only have to lace up a couple cars. Basically, there's a rule where based on the tonnage of the train is how many cars you have to air up on the head end to assist you with pulling the train down to the departure yard, because as you go down there's a slight downhill once you get to the east end of West Colton. So it's basically cheap insurance, little safety measure. So with this train we didn't hook up any air, but there's a good possibility that you'd have to when you build trains for the long tracks. I've had it to where you've had to lace up 20-25 cars because you have to pull the train all the way out of the yard pretty much and shove it back in, so there's quite a little grade coming out of the yard and going down towards the Colton Diamond where the BNSF and the UP cross each other. So we're coming in, getting our next track. So in theory we already checked the car numbers. Now we just need to make sure that this track is coupled up. So what I'm gonna do, and it was always really nice when there's an empty track, and it's for this reason. I'll show you. Alright, so now it's moving. So now what I'm doing is I'm trying to look down these cars and look for any little movement that suggests to me that this whole track is coupled up. Typically you'll see like this car stay and this car move, and you know, okay, there's a gap right there, so we're not coupled up. So then you walk down there, you open up the couplers if they're not cross drawbar, you send it back, get a good hook, stretch it, make sure you have it, bada boom bada bang, just like that. So now we got mid 1, next is mid 2, and then the rear. So since we had an empty track, that helps a lot with our vision. If you could have an empty track in between cuts, that was ideal. So with this track, I'm not really concerned about checking cars numbers yet. I'm gonna just basically have to wait until we couple up to it, get a stretch, and then I'll start checking, and then I'll look for gaps. So once again, I'm telling the guy on the head end, yeah, 30 cars. Then when we get to 20 cars, tell him 20, 10, 5, 3, 2, 1, that'll do. And then he sends me the pitch back, and then I back the train up to get the next cut. I then stretch the train, I stop it, and then I start going to work. Walk the track, check the car numbers, check for any gaps, any cars that didn't couple. Once we put the track together, I pitch it to him, he pulls out the train, and so on. So it's working at the trim and building outbound trains really isn't that hard. It's just when you get thrown for a loop, when you have a car in the track that's not supposed to be there, that turns basically a hour and a half into possibly 2 hours, because now you got to fish that car out, and typically you would have to set it on what they call the 25 track, or the 25 lead, I believe is what it was called, so that it could be rehumped into the right track. So that's what you didn't want, was any kind of strangers. Sometimes they tell you just to take it. It was an empty car and it was better just to take it than to delay the train being built. These are just the little things that can happen. Now keep in mind, there's usually 2 trim jobs working at the same time, maybe 3. There actually was 3 when I got out of training. They cut it to 2. So when there's 3 jobs working here all at once, sometimes you gotta wait for each other. You also have what we call C jobs, which are taking locomotives out of the roundhouse and putting them on outbound trains in the departure yard. So oftentimes you have to wait on them once you pull down to the departure yard. Sometimes you gotta wait on outbound trains to get back to the trim yard. So typically you would build 2 to 3 trains a shift, and that would take probably 8 to 10 hours. I am playing Run 8 version 3, and I do have the Cajon Pass DLC, which comes with West Colton. And it does actually work with version 3 if you put it into the right file. The automatic dispatcher does not work with this, but I kind of like it, to be honest, because it makes you have to do something. You have to dispatch this subdivision, you know. So we're coming to a stop. So then my brakeman, or whoever you want to call him, on the head end asks me if I'm ready for the pitch. I say ready for the pitch. I accept the pitch on my box, and then now I have control of the box again. So I make sure it's in reverse. Hear that slack coming, so that's when you know it's about to move. We're lined up to get the next cut. Now I'm kind of slowly walking with it most of the time. This is a good speed to make a joint. A joint or a hook just means coupling, however you want to say it. Okay, so now my first priority is to make sure that this made a good joint. So now we're going to go forward and get a stretch. Boom, we got a good stretch. Now I'm going to keep stretching it. And then about right there, I'm going to throttle off and stop it. That was probably a little bit too much. So now I'm going to start walking this track, paying attention to car numbers, and we stretched it enough now to where if these aren't all coupled together, there's going to be an obvious gap in the cars, which I will be able to see just looking down the track like this. So in that case, then we will come down this way. Let's say this is uncoupled. I'll make sure there's nothing wrong. I'll just open one of the couplers, then I'll bring it back, stretch it, and hopefully we got a good joint. Checking car numbers, so on. So that's basically what you do. So now let's go to the head end of the train. Alright, so we're on the head end of the train. Now we're going to pull this thing down. Tell you what, this brings back a lot of memories. Some kind of easing off, independent. Got this thing rolling pretty good. I always preferred being the conductor, so being back in the tracks, coupling everything up, checking the car lists, all that. I did not like pulling down. It wasn't that I couldn't do it or that I did a bad job, but when you get a heavy train and you're pulling it down, it's not the funnest thing in the world, because you typically don't have that good of brakes, and you're trying to line it up down here. Something the trim yard will tell you on the radio is leave room for 5, so that means that you're going to leave room for 5 road locomotives. So what I would do is I would be coming up here. I got 3 units, so I need to stop another plus 2 units short. So I would probably leave about this much room right here. Right, so we got room for 2 more road units, and we don't want them to be so close that they foul that switch up there. Then we got room for 3 more because we got 3 units, okay? So then I come down here. In West Colton, you need 6 brakes. That's the standard. You tie down 6 cars. Because that's what it takes to keep this train where it's at. So that's 6. And I hopefully can get a pin right here is what we would call it. Boom. So then I'm going to get on the radio and say whatever my trim job ID number is. Clear to come out. Head back to the trim. And they'll tell me what track to take on the way back. You could tell me track 304. I never liked the remotes. They were very glitchy. But I tell you what, if they worked correctly, I would have been a bigger fan. There were some days where they did work correctly, and it was pretty fun. You know, you're basically playing RC cars with a locomotive. Like, what's funner than that, you know? And then back to the trim yard we go. So then I jump on the head end, we take it back down. So this would be the job of the guy on the head end. Now me as the conductor, I would basically be back in the little crew room at the trim, seeing if we got any more paperwork for our next train, taking a break, maybe getting a bite to eat real quick. Meanwhile, the switchman, brakeman, second guy of our crew, whatever you want to call him, he would be the one doing all this. So I would be not down here ever if I was the conductor for the day. So for now, I'll just stop the power. Okay, and now I'll show you a little tour of West Colton, what I got going on. This is a helper set for the Mojave sub, which goes off at the Y right here. Goes up that way. So just in case, stall out on the hill, we got a helper set. We got an outbound train ready to go, but no power on the head end. Same with this one, right? Got some old tunnel motors that are stored. They're not needed right now. You can always take them out if I need them. Not sure where these cars came from. They'll go bye-bye. Sometimes when you place cars in this game, they like trip out and reappear somewhere. Got some local power. There's a few local jobs around West Colton. Got some road power. Got some power being worked on. Some cars, trains. Got what looks like a chemical train or an oil train. These are my units that I'll use for DPUs on outbound trains. So instead of running one locomotive all the way around and attacking on the rear like they do in real life, I just have the consist ready and I could just pluck one locomotive or two off at a time when needed. This is the receiving yard over here. We got 2 trains down here. So what I do, guys, is it's really difficult to do all this by yourself, so I What I do is I pay attention to what locomotives are on these trains. So let's say this train right here got two SD70 ACEs. Let's come up to the head end. And then we got two more plus two C45s or whatever they're called. So I'll copy the rail cars, I'll delete the locomotives off of it, I'll place these rail cars in the yard, so I keep the same rail cars, and then I will select the same locomotives and place them in the beginning of the roundhouse so they get processed through like they should, and then I just delete this whole train. So then I'll have an outbound train with the cars that came in, I'll have locomotives that came in with it. So it keeps it realistic when you're by yourself, because it's too hard to do it by yourself, trust me. So anyways guys, I hope this provided some insight. If you have any questions, throw them down in the comments. If you're not subscribed, I'll ask that you please subscribe. There'll be more stuff like this in the future. If you'd like to see anything specific, throw that in the comments. I'm always looking, I'm always reading, and I'm happy to answer your questions. So, thanks guys, I appreciate it. We'll see you later.